60% of the time, works every time.
And we're live.
Hello and welcome everyone to our 17th Town Hall. It's great to have you all back. And as per usual, we've got a very, very full schedule. So we'll just dive straight into it without any further ado. And we begin with a wonderful title and Nabil.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of share some thoughts that I've had, especially as we start to get a lot more open and permissionless in the way that we function as an organization. And I three things in particular have come to mind, but there's a lot of other things that I think are important and will be ongoing themes in the coming months. And so basically some ramblings as we move to an open organization. Firstly, it's about data. And I guess in my mind, data helps a lot for people who are coming from different perspectives to speak the same language and see eye to eye. So irrespective of the topic, it's always helpful to have something that's objective that everyone can look at and go, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from, some sort of objectivity. And, there's been a lot of discussion about mixed panel, but, data isn't just mixed panel. It can be UX research. It can be analytics we get from our, public profiles. It could be A/B testing. It could be research from third party. It could be that, whatever, right? It's basically something objective that's objective that people can look at and think, oh, okay, I get it. Like, let's experiment. So, in terms of from a cultural perspective, I think it's important for us to think about whenever we're making a decision or going in a certain direction, we think about, okay, let's make sure that we have something objective so that whether we are making a decision based on data or we're looking to experiment with something in order to make data, we have that as part of our process, right? And I think, critical thinking aligned with this data is incredibly important for us to be successful. So one simple example is a couple of weeks ago, we uploaded a whole bunch of videos from our awesome conference at the end of June. And because we uploaded in such a short amount of time frame, we got punished from an impressions perspective, right? And I think that's just one example of many across multiple functions about why data is important. So yeah, for each section here, there's also further reading if people are interested in a particular topic to kind of dive in. Secondly is about how we communicate. Not to be too crass, but this whole no asshole rule is an interesting kind of terminology that people like to use. And I think it's quite, candorous in the way in which it describes how people should be kind of interacting with each other, right? So we all work remote. We all work in kind of either at home in a co-working space. And so it's very easy for us to, that isolation combined with the fact that everything is text-based is super, super easy for us to misinterpret people's tone or how people are coming across, right? So we should be very wary about how we communicate and generally make sure that we don't come across as harsher than we seem. So we may have a certain tone in our head, but across text, it could come across very different. So just be aware, just be cognizant of how we're communicating. And, there's a really interesting article about the Occupy movement and how they ended up with a really big asshole problem. So, people would come in and be like, well, I can get involved, but I want to do things my way. And we're really kind of uncooperative. And, I'll let you read the article, but it's an interesting take on how a permissionless open organization can in fact actually have, there are rules to engage in about how you should operate, how you should communicate. And then there's an entire book. If you really have problems with assholes or you think you are one, there's a really good book that you can read. Third is taking a very different shift is thinking about every one of our roles as less about implementers, but more about stewards or maintainers. So we're going to become, we are moving towards this DAO model. And in fact, we have, we're hoping to have a huge community who want to get involved. So what happens when there are lots of people who want to help out with it? It's not scalable for you to do all the work. It's about making your function, whether you're a designer in testing, in engineering, in product, how can you make your function scalable? So there's a couple examples there. And I think it's very early for us to like start, actually having a playbook about how we should become like this. But it's more of a mindset about as we get more and more people getting involved, how can we come up, everyone in the organization is, a domain expert. They're really good at what they do. How can we make that scalable? How can you create a playbook about what you do to make it simple for anyone to kind of get involved and participate? So that's this. And there's an interesting Discuss post on this exact same topic that you can kind of jump into and take a stab at if you're interested. And finally, there's like a whole bunch of interesting topics that, continue on this. So we have bureaucracy busters, which is essentially this idea that what prevents people from contributing to status, right? And if there is particular things that prevent people from contributing, how can we remove those barriers? There's ideas around people's incentives to actually become contributors, become part of the community. And that leads us into this topic of grassroots activism. So there's a lot of stuff here, a lot of interesting topics for discussion. Check out the Discuss post, the further readings. There's a tech talk on this topic that I'm hoping to have that's penciled in for the 14th September for anyone who's interested. And without taking up too much time, that's it from me.
Thanks so much, Nabs. It's important not to be an asshole. So into new people who have joined us, some really, really exciting faces here. And this is going to be Rajani introducing them.
Hey guys. Yes, we have 3 new core contributors. We have Hazel, Ned, and Ola all joining us. And also touching on, we still have 20 open roles. So go ahead and check out the jobs pages. Also the reminder that you still get the 5,000 SNT referral bonus. Next slide. And then Prague event update. I'm sure you guys have all seen that we have a few events coming up in Prague. Listed, we have our status hackathon, our team get together, and DevCon. For kind of ease sake of planning, I ask that people please RSVP to which events that they are planning on going to, as we do need to send a proper head count to the hotel for hotel rooms. Everybody that's a core team member will have a hotel room. I just need what dates that you are attending. So I have linked the doc. Just go ahead and take a look at the doc, add your check-in and check-out dates. And if you have any other questions, let me know. For DevCon, what we've kind of landed on for ticketing is that everybody who would like to attend is responsible for getting their own tickets. We are still limited to 20 tickets, but when the next wave goes, we have a discount code for 10 tickets that we will share with everyone. And then kind of, I guess, to keep track of how we have for 20 tickets, we have a spot in the doc that you can add your name, just so internally we can keep count. So if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Rajani. It's really, the Prague is going to be amazing, so I encourage everybody to get there. We move swiftly into Status Studio, and this should be Akshi.
Hi, everyone. So 2 major pieces that we've been pushing on the last 2 weeks. The first one is hiring for a senior UX UI designer, a front-end developer, as well as now a tech content writer. And the second piece is really revisiting or redesigning, let's say, the education content model on Status Studio with inputs from a few folks across Status. So just to get into that piece a little bit more, the education content on Status Studio, the goal is that it should be purpose-driven so that all the users that are coming onto Status Studio down the line can achieve the purpose that they're there for very quickly when it comes to the education path or the education journey that they will follow. The other piece that we want to make sure through the education is that we can personalize or customize the learning journey as much as possible for each user on Studio. And the third piece, obviously, is to try and make the education content as interactive as possible to keep the user engaged and for him or her to get the concepts really absorbed. So in order to achieve that, we are moving towards more of a Q&A type journey, which is making sure that when the user comes onto the platform, we ask them what their purpose is, as well as sort of gauge their level of understanding of various topics that build up to the learning journey. And so that's culminating in a concept map of or a topic map of what the various concepts are that the user needs to learn on Status Studio's platform to achieve the various goals that he or she might have. And this week, we are getting feedback into that from quite a few devs across Status, with the goal then that potentially next week or the week after that, we run an external poll across devs, potentially maybe at ETHberlin that's coming up, as well as just broadly across the Ethereum dev community through email, and have that survey come in for the content piece anyway for Status Studio. Everything else is on track in terms of defining the broader MVP of Studio beyond the education content, so the more IDE pieces of it. And the one area of focus that will come into play in the next 3 weeks or so is going to be to have a bit more of a specific marketing plan for Status Studio. Some questions have come up around that, in terms of how we would want to market Status Studio versus, let's say, Status more broadly, or how does that integrate with Embark and Incubate, et cetera. And that's something that we will work on with Johnny and the marketing team starting this week and going into the next couple of weeks, especially that Ned has joined, especially since Ned has joined the team now. The branding and the initial marketing and launch or the PR announcement for Status Studio will be something that we'll be really focused on in the next couple of weeks. That's it on my end.
Thank you so much, Akshi. As always, it's an absolute torrent from Studio. It's great to see. And that moves us into Incubate. This should be Ben.
Yep, I'm here. Hello, everyone. So new Incubate alert. You guys may have seen the announcement in the blog post or Twitter, but Block Party has joined the Incubate family. It's an awesome app, basically, that helps solve the issue with having meetups and people not showing to meetups by staking some ETH. So it's really, really awesome. You should check it out. There's 3 founders there. They're all based in London, but they move around a lot. I've got a picture of them, which I hope that they don't mind me using. The second thing is with ETHberlin, these 2 incubators, Pixura and Block Party, are getting involved. The Block Party app is going to be used at ETHberlin. And with Pixura, I think one of the marketing guys are going to talk a little bit further about how we're incorporating Pixura into ETHberlin, which will be really exciting. Third update for me is that the research associate position has been filled. Ola has joined the team, and she's been great. She's been helping on a part-time basis, and she's now full-time, and she's primarily tasked with evaluating projects and looking for really cool, interesting projects for us to accept into the incubator. The last 4 weeks also, since my last update, is that we've just been basically tweaking the program. Now that we have these 2 incubatees, we've been building out the mentors, we're building out some discount programs with some external vendors, and just making the tweaks that we need to ensure that we're providing a really excellent experience. So the next month, there's 2 main priorities. One is we're trying to fill in 2 positions that are of paramount importance. So the first being a program manager for the incubator program, and the second being a a generalist designer that can help with all the incubatees that come in to the program. We're also focused on our next batch of incubatees. So we are focusing, we want a good healthy mix of protocol and application layer projects. And we're trying to get projects that really solve the biggest issues. So whether it's layer 2 scaling, or security, identity, oracles, basically things that we need in order to advance the Ethereum ecosystem as a whole. So if you have anything that's interesting that you want to apply for, please go to the Status Incubate link.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. It's really, really good to have Makoto Inui and those guys join the Status family. And as Michael would say, no block, no party. That moves us swiftly into finance, and this should be Danny.
Yeah, after some changes in the team over the past 6 months, the current team constellation is starting to show the results. So we have progressed a lot by tidying up the history, going through all the past invoices and receipts. Some of you have been contacted because of some payment mistakes in the past. This shall remain exceptional. We've improved the payment processes already and will continue to further professionalize our setup in this regard. With that, many kudos to Lucas, who has sorted out many tricky cases from the past. Thanks a lot. We will make Bamboo expenses transparent, meaning that by the end of the month, there will be a report on Discuss. There is already a blog post on it. Its title is Transparent Expenses. If you still want to put your opinion down, you're welcome to do so. Then further, we will maintain our financial data on Bamboo. About 50% of you currently already receive at least partially a salary and or expenses in crypto. And we would like to boost that adoption. And therefore, by default, we are going to set the expense payment to 100% crypto. You can change that anytime. And since we would like you to update the financial data anyway until the 20th of September, meaning that it will be in place for the payment in September, you could also change that. Then for each payment cycle, so for each month, you will have time to update any data until the 20th. If you would have any changes after that, you would have to ping somebody from finance directly. The fields you have to update you see below. You find all those fields in your profile as you see on the screenshot in the bottom half of the page. That's it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Danny. That takes us over to marketing, and this is Sean and Johnny.
Cool. I'll kick off with ETHberlin. So yeah, look, I'll just be really quick with this. So following off from our huge success with India in terms of from a content marketing approach, we actually sponsored one of our community members to actually come and be a community roving reporter for us. Prabeline, shout out to Prabeline. Thank you again for all this hard work. So again, we're looking to do something similar again, taking advantage of all of the different opportunities that we have. So that's from a comms and marketing side. Yeah, we're going to be, obviously, we're the communication app of ETHberlin, so we're going to be taking every opportunity to try and promote that. There'll be Bounties Network as well that will be giving out Berlin Coin, which will be you'll access it on the Bounties Network, and yeah, we'll be having some status-specific bounties on Bounties Network as well. So a lot of exciting things to come. If you are interested, we actually have our content strategy plan for the ETH Global events in that Google Doc. There. Go on to the next slide. Okay, so then the next big exciting piece, there's actually a lot more to come on this in the next hour or two, is our next community competition. And it's called CommuniTEE. So if that title doesn't give it away, essentially what it is, it's a t-shirt design competition. So essentially what it is we've partnered with the decentralized crypto art community, or the art project, sorry. And we're doing some, really exciting, we've got some really exciting designers who will be submitting designs in two categories. One category, which is status, and there'll be more details on what does a category of status look like. And another one, which is that crypto culture. But yeah, super exciting. We're going to have more information on how to get involved. And then for those who aren't artistically inclined like myself, you'll have opportunities to get involved as well at a later stage as well. On to the next slide. And so on that, I will quickly speak about the connection to ETHberlin and the community competition. So you'll see on the far right that really cool crypto art that's there from Super Rare, actually, who's one of our incubatees. So super exciting. We've actually been able to work something out thanks to Andy and Richard on cracking this. But we will actually have, so the community design submissions will actually be completed right before ETHberlin, and the voting will commence at our actual booth during ETHberlin. And while people vote, they'll actually get a chance to go into the raffle to win one of these really cool pieces of digital art. Maybe not these exact pieces, but one of these pieces. So yeah, super exciting. From the beginning of ETHberlin, the voting will begin for the favorite design, which will become the status brand T. Aside from that, we're going to have a whole bunch of other swag. Down to Johnny.
Cool. So there's a lot of events going on. The next few months is a very busy schedule. Obviously, we'll be in Berlin for Blockchain Week. Patrick, Julian, Rachel, some of the team members will be presenting with Golem and Raiden Network as part of the Blockchain Week events. That will lead right into ETHberlin, as Sean mentioned. So a lot of exciting things around that. With community competition kicking off and the content plan that they run, which is great. And then in October, we will be at ETH San Francisco. So details around that to be coming out shortly. They've recently announced it, and we're obviously happy to be part of these ETH Global events. And then, DevCon 4, which Johnny spoke to, which we're really excited to be part of again. Details around that as well, around our marketing plan, our content plan, and some exciting stuff we have in store. And then, of course, the Status Hackathon, which will be the weekend before DevCon. I'll speak to that on the next slide. But once again, yeah, just a lot of things happening. And then Oscar will be presenting Status at in Hong Kong on September 8th. So kudos to Oscar for getting out there and promoting Status. And I guess on the topic of events, if anyone has an event they want to attend or host or a meetup they want to put on, please let me know and I can help arrange, because once again, we just want to get out there and promote Status as much as possible. These events are turning into a great tool for us. Next slide. The Status Hackathon. So some exciting progress on this. We've secured our venue, which will be at the beautiful National House Smyshov in Prague. It's an amazing venue. It's got all the space we need, plenty of space for hacking, for quote unquote happenings and cool experiences to partake, and really just a big enough space to invite the entire community to come join us. It's going to be really great. I'm excited about it. Last week, we announced a partnership with Winding Tree. Winding Tree is hosting a travel-focused hackathon a few days before our hackathon in Prague. And we're inviting, the attendees of the Winding Tree hackathon to continue working on their projects at ours. And I think we'll see some really interesting projects and dApps to come out of that, all focused on the travel industry, which is cool. And then we currently are running a digital hackathon in partnership with Block Geeks and Bounty One. There's about a week left of that. And the theme for this digital hackathon is to use Embark to build a dApp that can be used in an event. And that can be anything from live streaming to registration to you name it, to hotel booking, anything. And then the winners from that will be invited to partake at the Status Hackathon as well. And there's just a lot of really interesting judges, mentors, experiences and happenings, which we'll be announcing in the coming weeks. And we'll be announcing our sponsors as well. So a lot of really cool stuff there. And over to Sean.
Cool. I'll just quickly run through the report. So I think Nabil actually touched on this at the beginning of the presentation. So we did actually see a bit of a hit in our overall reach due to just not optimizing for the way algorithms work in social. So as a result, we have seen our impressions drop pretty markedly. We are working towards that. Being able to create more engaging content will hopefully drive that up. And we have taken some steps already to help try and avoid something like that happening again. In terms of engagements have dropped as well, but it pretty much comes down to the reality that we were at India, and we had a lot of engaging content happening during that time. And then we kind of went quiet. But fortunately, we actually have the community competition about to kick off. We've got ETHberlin immediately, like during that same time frame, and then the hackathon will really ramp up from a content perspective. So we see a continued, sustained engagement level there. In terms of total mentions, look, we are down 46%. That is primarily due to the NIM. The NIM announce was still, circulating quite a bit in the previous report. But what was really interesting was there was some coverage from us having the, I guess the number one developing spot amongst other Ethereum projects. So that was cool to see that some of the blog and news mentions were related to that. On to the next slide. And then lastly is the advocacy program. So this is in no way any kind of design or anything that we've finalized or anything. This is actually a contribution from one of our really active community members, Wars Over John. He felt really impassioned that he decided to go to Twitter and design an asset and put it out there. But really what it is that we're still on the lookout for what we call our community. There are some names that are kind of leading the charge, but we're actually still open for more feedback and suggestions. So please head to the discuss page. But we'll also be exploring other mechanisms, maybe some interviews or some other forms of community signaling. But super excited about that. And then from there, we're going to hopefully start kicking off a project on actually locking down what some of the community assignments might start looking like. But super excited about the advocacy program. That's it.
Thank you so much, Sean and Johnny. Yeah, when Sean says that crypto culture, I'm like, oh, thanks, Dad. But it's really very exciting to see, particularly the T-shirts coming through, and I encourage everybody to get involved in that competition. And obviously our hackathon, like that thing is going to be absolutely amazing. I'm in no way biased because I'm responsible for the happenings and the experience, and I promise you it's going to be worth it. So make sure you're in Prague by the 26th. And that moves us into UX and UXR, which should be Pat.
Hey, Andy, thanks so much. Just quick update on Status Experience Day. I want to do a little bit of a follow-up and thank you to both core contributors and people part of the community. So this is an exercise we started about 2 weeks ago where we have a basic questionnaire that people could go through and complete 4 tasks that we wanted people to do with the app and give feedback on. So we left this open for 2 weekends. We're actually going to continue to leave it open so anyone from the community can do it really at any time that they would like to. But we wanted to highlight just one of the tasks, or some of the feedback that we got from the 12 responses. So you can go on to the next slide. All right, so what we'll cover is the area of chat. So specifically, we asked people to try and add a status core contributor or a contact of some type and start chatting with them. And so the thing to highlight here is while we had about 8 people who reported that they had a success with this particular chat, I think it's worth highlighting that 4 people didn't, and 1 person was actually not entirely sure whether they had added a contact. And the reason why I'm kind of honing in on this detail is because I think this is similar to different types of feedback that we've received. I think both within Status and then from various community members. And this is just sort of like an organized way of grouping this type of feedback. And it's interesting to see that people are still having problems with chats, or at least adding a contact in chat. So it's something to work on. We also followed up this question with a question about ease of use. So if you go on to the next slide. So we asked people to rate how difficult it was to add a contact. And you have a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being pretty difficult and 5 being easy. The good end, a lot of people said it was pretty easy to add a contact. But as far as in terms of comparison to the overall task, this was the task that performed least well. So it was the most difficult in terms of perceived rating as well. So you can go on to the next slide. In addition to that, we asked people about, to explain a little bit deeper about why it might have been difficult if they did rate that it was difficult to add someone on chat. And these are just a sample of the different types of feedback that we got. Mainly it was because people couldn't find someone else or another contact once they got into the app, or they had no idea what a contact code is after trying to, say, add friends through invite friends. So these are some of the more consistent pieces of feedback that we got. So we're going to continue to look into this and see if we can make it easier for people to add contacts or discover other people within the app. So look out for more updates. I would like to also highlight that on September 6th, we are going to conduct another user research session or another usability study in Berlin leading into ETHberlin, specifically on chat, related to chat and chat commands. So stay tuned for more.
Thank you so much, Pat. Yeah, that's, as always, really great to see proper user testing happening and the iterations that come about as a result of that. It moves us into our core swarms and some of the technical stuff. And the first update should be from Rachel.
No, I'm going to be taking it today. So cool. We have 0926 release is being tested right now. It's a huge release. We've got over 170 commits and 29 contributors. And we've got some new features coming, such as sound notifications for new messages. We have a really awesome new quick access wallet from chat and dApps, and a new privacy policy, which is, we've been working on to be more transparent about what we do with user data and status. And so I encourage everyone to check that out. And we have new support for Web3 provider opt-in access. And right now that's working with our test app and with our ENS app, but we hope to see it in more places soon. And if all goes well, it will be out later today, if not early this week. We're also working on the 0927 release, which is going to coincide with ETHberlin. So we'll have ETHberlin updates and enhancements, and we want as many people at the event to be using it for dApps and chatting and just really embracing decentralization. And a note for all contributors that the deadline for ETHberlin changes is this Wednesday, and the release will go out next week. So if there's something you're working on, please get the PR wrapped up. And just a quick update on the Wall of Shame. So we've talked about that in previous town halls. We made a big list of things that we're not too happy with and we want changed. It was a bit hard to get visibility over the progress, so I created a milestone. And you can see we've only completed one issue from the Wall of Shame, and we've started progress on a few others, like PFS. But definitely check that out. And if there's an issue that you can work on, please grab it. So that's it for core.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chad. Into the mobile app and an update on ULC from Boris.
No, I guess it will be me this time. Everything is swapped, right? Yeah, it's actually a new swarm. It's still, the idea is still in review, but will be merged pretty quickly. But it's an actual enabling KLC and LAS in the application, testing it and making it usable. So it's our P0 priority. So essentially, we did some progress within like last 2 weeks that was done on our cluster side, on our status go side, like basically with discoverability and testing the synchronization of that. But then what we're gonna do within the next 2 weeks, we will re-enable LAS for nightly builds and do more or less thorough testing of this mode and try to figure out the issues there. And as soon as we find them, we'll have some roadmap of what we need exactly to fix to move forward with LAS and ULC. Yeah, that's all from my side.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That moves us into Infra Tooling and an update from Jakob.
Hey, the main work that has been done the past two weeks was on the Jenkins setup for building our application for all 4 platforms. Now that we've added desktop in 2 versions for Linux and macOS, we've been having trouble with the fact that there was a split between nightlies for both mobile and desktop builds and for PR builds as well. And the major work has been done last 2 weeks to combine all of those into one parallel builds build that will be used both for nightlies and BRs, which is coming soon. And Jenkins has been a major pain point, so hopefully once this is fully rolled out, this is going to improve the life of both developers and testers. In other smaller news, major refactoring of Chinese status website, more refreshing of hosts for Jenkins, and something cool that I created recently, which is Fleet Status IM, which is an overview of our available fleets that we use during building of the application, which is a stepping stone towards being able to select fleets within the app in order to be able to test different versions of Status Go and make sure our newly released versions are stable. And we also have a new view over all of the applications, the application builds that we do at the nightly page at archive HTML. It's not linked yet, but it's already available. That's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really worth emphasizing just how important and inspiring some of the work is that happened both on LES and making sure that we can get a light client operating in the phone again, and in terms of our infrastructure, particularly those merged builds between desktop and mobile. To have one code base for two separate things like that is going to be a really interesting thing going forward. And it's fantastic to see it all happen smoothly, bar the problems with Jenkins. So thank you so much, and huge kudos to Jakob and the IDS guys. That's now P2P Initiatives with Pedro.
I think it's Adam.
Yep, I guess it's me.
Sorry.
Yep, sure. Yeah, so we were testing Rendezvous Peers Discovery Protocol on staging. This allowed us to test it with LES as well. So pretty much we succeed that, and it's right now possible to sync the chain using Rendezvous and LES using command line client. So that was our goal as a preparation for LES support. And yeah, we just last week merged the changes per request and stuff. So yeah, the current goal is to just start incorporating that into the UI and yeah, run LES tests more. But that's gonna happen in the swarm that we were talking about before. So yeah, that's the one thing. Another one is discussion about protection against network DOS attacks and whisper spamming. So you just kick off this discussion, and there are two issues, like two major problems. One is OS level protection. That's something that's kind of well researched, and I believe we have some ideas how to handle that. The other one is whisper spam protection. And it's for us, it's a little bit tricky because the natural choice for spam protection with Whisper is POW value, like proof of work value. Higher it is, then it takes a little bit more computing power that you need to use to actually send messages into the network. But for us, as we use, we're developing client for mobile devices, we need to lower this value, and that's kind of made it easier to attack us or spam our cluster and generally the network that we use to exchange messages. So here are we gonna try to compensate that? So how can we protect from spam using some different techniques, not only proof of work, but maybe some other things. And then the last part is further decentralization. So the obvious thing that been around for a few, that was discussed like a few weeks ago, but I guess got never to the point where we merged with the app.io. So we pretty much would like to integrate with that, if that's possible, and somehow allow people to run status nodes using this service easily. It is also about updating the documentation and describing how easily one can run a status cluster or join the existing one in order to extend the whole this whole size of the cluster and make it more resilient and decentralized. So that's another initiative that we are talking about right now in peer-to-peer team. Yeah, that would be all.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adam. Some really, really exciting stuff there, genuinely is. And that moves us into core chats, and this one is Pedro.
Yeah. So, hi. So last couple of weeks, we've worked, just to give a high-level overview, we've updated the ENS username resolution for contacts to work with the latest version of the contract. We're waiting for the merge of React Native 0.56 because that fixes some things required to merge the ABI spec. It's currently not fully working because of a dependency that will be fixed in the 0.56. We also fixed the validation. We have a more robust validation of contacts when we add it through whatever method, be it QR codes or be it get.status.im. There's some ongoing refactoring. I think it's now at the PR level of the init and login flow, which was a bit messy. And a long-awaited feature is this work on chat badges, especially the part where you're able to go into a chat and start at the last unread message or the first unread message, and then be able to scroll down or up to catch up with those parts of the chat. So that will make it much easier to follow chats if you're not in the app for a few days or whatever. And with this, next slide will be perfect for secrecy with Andrea.
Yeah, hello everyone. So we've been working again on for secrecy. So at the moment we managed to get a couple of builds working. So they send messages with perfect for secrecy in one-to-one chats. So I've been sending out the links. If anyone wants to try them, it'd be very good so that we can just test them out, see if there are any problems. It should kind of work exactly as the main application. And also we started the effort of documenting the protocol and started the white paper, which is led by Pedro. The next weeks, we're going to focus on changing the user flows so that, for example, stuff like wallet recovery is handled, because with perfect forward secrecy, that needs some adjustments. It doesn't work just as it is now. And then we're going to fortify the protocol, handling a few more edge cases and basically taking into account malicious users and responding to malicious packages and so on and so forth. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Really brilliant stuff. Yeah, Whisper really is going to be about once you guys are finished with this, which is super exciting. So that takes us into ENS usernames. And has Barry made it onto the call?
Yep, I'm here.
Cool.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, I guess, wherever you may be. So over the past 2 weeks, well, following last week's bi-weekly, there was a great ENS call where a lot of security considerations have been raised and implementations have begun, including a very interesting solution by Ricardo implementing a slashing mechanism that uses Merkle proofs. I mean, the call also demonstrates how much great work is just being done around ENS in general that was not even laid out in the original idea of ENS usernames. And I just want to give a shout out to the Wallet team for what they're doing and the core DApp team for what they're doing to integrate ENS content hashes into the browser, which is such an underrated and crucial component in taking dApps of today from being these centralized applications that interact with smart contracts to fully decentralized applications. Also, props to Eric for opening a PR that allows status chat to resolve public whisper keys from the fields designated for it in the ENS spec. Also, as we put finishing UI touches on the ENS dApp, we're already testing the operation management and governance, what have you, of the dApp. And one thing that came up early is that for the contract to be decentralized, the controller of it can't be a single person, right? And the first logical progression in decentralized governance is to use a multi-sig wallet. It's sort of, by now, already sort of the tested, secure, proven solution. And so, one question we've been throwing around is if you could build one feature in 60 days or less that moves a multi-sig wallet towards being a DAO or a DAO component, what would it be? And there's very little feedback on that. And it mostly stems around the fact that very few people have ever used a multi-sig wallet, let alone use one on a regular basis. So we do have a small working group now of core contributors that are using a multi-sig to govern over the testnet contract. And if anyone actually wants to participate in the governance process, and this is not just technical people, this is really open to all core contributors, because governance itself is not something that is meant to be a highly technical process. It's something that's meant to engage everybody. We started a channel called Multi-Sig Evolution. So come join us, where you could actually get involved in these testnet multi-sig processes, or just follow the general discussion. And there will be a talk coming up on using a multi-sig wallet. The only prerequisite is that you already know how to use a regular wallet. That's it for me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Barry. Every slide gets better and better. And that leads us into the wallets with Goran.
Hi, everyone. This week, apart from the usual refactoring and bug fixing, we also have the ENS usernames in wallet resolution, which is currently still being developed. It kind of waits for the latest error exchanges from the same thing in chat. Other than that, we have preparatory work on the hardware wallet, and you'll hear more about that from Michela on the next slide. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Goran. And that leads us into voting and 279.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. Graham is out today, but he's been doing most of the legwork on this. But basically, a lot of what we're doing right now is taking the learnings from the first iteration of the DApp and putting it, trying to figure out where do we go from here, right? And some of the things that, well, for one, the first major concern is how do we get more people to vote? So that's something that Graham's doing a lot of research on right now, just in general, where looking at all kinds of voting historically, where maybe swaths of the population have not voted. But I think voting, I may be mischaracterizing it, but voting itself is not necessarily the best term, but making sure that we get more stakeholder representation, because you could use something like delegated democracy to appoint a delegate to vote on your behalf. But we basically want a larger swath of S&T stakeholders represented in the next iteration of voting. So with that, there is a new flow that allows us to do that. While that is actually, the details of that are actually getting hashed out, there's some like low-hanging fruit that we think we can actually implement now while we figure out some of these store-near issues around how do we actually motivate more people to vote and or get them to represent themselves. And one of those things is in the first iteration we wanted to implement quadratic voting, and we implemented a version of it where on each poll your vote essentially is quadratic. But if you've read Radical Markets, the way it really should work is if you're allocating your vote to a particular poll, that limits the amount you can allocate to a different poll. So the plan is to at least make it true quadratic voting in the sense that you can only allocate so much S&T across all polls. So that's an initial step that we've resolved. But Graham has done a lot of work on that, and there's also a lot of feedback coming in from people who did vote to give us more clarity on sort of where do we go from here. But
cool.
Sort of
Thank you so much for stepping in there, Barry. There's some really exciting stuff happening on that voting DApp, so it'll be great to hear from Graham in 2 weeks, which moves us rapidly into the hardware wallets, and this is Guy Louis.
Yes, so for the hardware wallet in its light version, The objective for Q3 is to put up a first beta version of the product, meaning both at the Java card level and the Android client level, and to manufacture our first batch. So in the past 2 weeks, we've been busy basically putting up a swarm team to reach this objective and getting started on this swarm. The first decision we had to take is how the applet is loaded in the Java card, since it has a lot of different consequences: security, user experience, and sourcing. And we've decided to have the client load the applet and not at the factory, mainly for security reasons. We also had our first user flow created. We started the loading part of the applet in Android. And on the sourcing side, we have engaged in discussion with several manufacturers and got some quotes. So for the next weeks, the plan is to have the applet loading part working in Android, have an iteration of the user experience flow, define a packaging with all details, including the artworks. On the technical side, we'll have to discuss and define how the client-side password, the one that's used to encrypt our database, is generated, and especially if it has an impact on the Java card, the way it's currently developed and its APIs. And for the sourcing, we'll have to secure it with a preferred vendor and engage in discussion with some alternative vendors. So that's for the hardware wallet lite. For the Pro version, the objective in Q3 is to freeze the product definition, and in particular the hardware. In the past 2 weeks, we've had a workshop with Michele to go over the development status and the next steps. And we also started, from a software point of view, to work on the hardware abstraction layer for the STM32 chip we plan to use. And for the coming weeks, we'll mainly first set up a working relationship with ST Microelectronics to progress on the choice of the exact chip we'll use. And to progress on the product definition, we'll start to work on the list of the usages of this hardware wallet Pro, organize some brainstorming with you guys about this, and start a benchmark of the current hardware wallets. And that's it for my side.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Guy-Louis. Again, it's just another incredibly exciting development, and great to see it moving along so fast. That moves us into dApps and developers. And I believe this is Rachel.
Yeah, well, actually, no, this is Julian.
Julian. Welcome back from holiday.
Thank you. So our focus for the dApps team mostly is around fixing and making sure that everything runs smooth for ETHberlin. Related to that, we have a number of items. The first one is implementing the Web3 opt-in screen that we discussed earlier. And essentially, the main goal here is to improve the privacy for dApp users so that they don't leak more information that they intend to leak. So this is something we are doing with the MetaMask team, and we will release a blog post on that fairly soon. So it will impact potentially any dApp team or any dApp developer, because they will have to make some changes on their own. So it's fairly important that we synchronize with all the brother and that we make sure that we communicate around that. But for now, we still keep the old Web3 injection, so there is no changes for any dApps. One other thing that we worked on recently is implementing some persistency support for browser. So because currently, if you browse a dApp and then you do something else like browsing another dApp or chat with someone, you will lose your browser state. So which means it will restart from the first screen. So now with this implementation, you will not lose the state, but this is only for Android for now. related to that, so we also try to support all the incubates we have, and so in that regard, we're implementing the support for the super rare token. So first, by just making sure that the super rare dApp works fine, but also by making sure that you can browse all those tokens directly from within the wallet. So the same way you can browse CryptoKitties or Crypto Strikers. And so related to those dApp, we had a number of issues and bugs to fix. So hopefully it will also fix issues for other dApps in the wild. And so we are always trying to improve the support for the various dApps out there. And one important item also that we started looking at is implementing ENS, but for the browser. So resolving ENS name and making sure that then you can browse dApps that are stored either on IPFS or Swarm. So which is kind of a pretty important step for the dApp browser, because then we will, like, for real, support decentralized dApps. Because probably you know that right now, most of the dApps are not really decentralized because they are still relying on all the web technologies, namely DNS and HTTP servers. So we're trying to move away from this. So this is pretty important. So the idea is to implement this EIP 1062 standard, which is still in progress and not completely finalized. So again, it's something that we are doing with the MetaMask team, because they are the one pushing in those direction, which is fairly important. So what we will work on next weeks, mostly finishing what we are doing right now, so the token support and ENS implementation support. So related to the Web3 opt-in screen, we also want to make sure that status users, they can manage permissions. So here it means that we don't want to force users to accept or to have to interact with some complex permission screen every time they use some dApp. So there is some more advanced UX that we want to implement to make this more smooth and configurable. Another important item is related to our wall of shame and making sure that we will improve and implement proper security certificate checks. So this is related to browser again. So right now we are validating certificates, HTTPS certificates, but apparently it's some area we can improve. So that will be a focus in the next few weeks. And lastly, we also want to continue pushing for extensions. And the next important thing we want to implement is the ability to load remote code. So right now, you can, if you create an extension, you can only reuse implementations and primitives that are currently supported by Status. But we also want to make sure that any dApp developer can provide their own logic and their own primitive. And so there are a number of privacy and security concerns related to that. So the idea is to create some pretty detailed specification, share it with the community, and then iterate and hopefully ship this for Status Hackathon. Or yeah, that's it for me.
Brilliant, thank you, Julian. Bring on status extensions. We all know that they're going to change the world. So that takes us to Embark and Yuri. Is Yuri online?
Hello.
There we go.
All right. So just putting here the slides. Right. So yeah, these updates are always a bit tricky in the sense that the team does so much in 2 weeks that if I were to list each point, it would take maybe 20 minutes. They're really killing it, and I want to give them a big kudos for all the work they are doing. So to list some of the highlights, without spoiling 2.2 too much, we work on integrating Embark with the upcoming eWASM functionality. For that, we did some pairing with the eWASM team. That also involved doing some integration work with the Alert client. And that also paves the way for Embark to better support different clients, not just GET. We updated the website to make it a bit cleaner, easier to read. It also includes things like much better code highlighting, copying functionality. Overall, the tutorials are much easier to follow now. We also restructured the docs. That's something that should be available later today, so stay tuned. We also updated and improved the Viper support, which will be coming in 3.2. So now it works really well with the latest version of Viper, which had some breaking changes. We're working on improving the Swarm support for the latest version. So Swarm is a very important technology for us, as it's a core part of the original Web3 umbrella. The latest version has some breaking changes, and we're working to integrate Embark with this latest version. We'll soon also start a bounty campaign that will include many bounties for Embark. So if you are a GS developer who's been logging to get involved, here's your chance. There'll be many exciting tasks and a little bit for everyone, from fixing bugs to building your plugins. So stay tuned. And finally, but not least, the goals for the next 2 weeks is still releasing 3.2. So we had some unforeseen challenges with that release, but for good reason. This release makes very considerable changes, namely in the pipeline, and we want to ensure a quality release. Or it's taking a bit longer than we expected, but it will be worth it. And tutorials and documentation is and will be an ongoing task. So we did a lot of updates already, but we'll continue. Now that a lot of improvements have been done to the documentation, we'll be focusing a bit more on tutorials and guides. So stay tuned for that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Yuri. I tend to agree that the amount of work that you guys get through in 2 weeks is genuinely remarkable. And that moves us on to another incredibly productive team, Desktop and Vitaly.
Hi, guys. So during the past 2 weeks, we've been nailing down some of the layout and UI issues, and fixing some layout recalculation that caused some nagging UI problems on desktop, adding emojis, which is a fun part, really, but it looks nice. Some additional features like navigation to profiles from public chats, and big item which is currently ongoing is the breakpad integration, which is a Google tool for improved and simplified error reporting, because we do have crashes sometimes, albeit on a much less frequently than before, and this tool simplifies basically the whole process of reporting and collecting logs, etc. And our future plans are, well, first, as we got a request from the core mobile team to upgrade React Native to the next version, and during quick testing by the Townhall, we actually noticed that the desktop application doesn't quite work as expected. It doesn't work at all, so we have to update our fork of React Native to use the latest upstream version. Also, there is some ongoing work by George with regards to using specs generative testing features to improve our very bare bones and very often simply missing test coverage for desktop specifically. And we also plan on starting implementing some Jenkins integration for running some automated tests. And there have been some work ongoing also on message statuses to finally, there are some issues with a PR to finally bring the message statuses and system warnings functionality available, because it just looks nice and it simplifies some debugging of the system. And another important item, we've also discussed this in our team meeting on Friday, is that we would really like to move on some wider internal usage, internal status usage of the desktop app, so that it can actually supersede Slack as the preferred communication solution. And with that in mind, we will be doing some, let's say, surveys to nail down what is actually missing and what are the top priority items for us to implement or fix in the desktop app so that it can be a worthy and usable alternative to Slack. Yeah, so that's roughly what we have in store.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vitaly. And again, I strongly encourage everybody, like the desktop builds are on our Nightly's page. We'll post the links in like our social channels after this. And it's really well worth downloading that if you're running Mac or Linux and playing around, because some of the improvements recently have been stark and awesome. So the sooner we can move away from Slack and onto the decentralized web for good, the better it is for everyone. That moves us into research and Nimbus with Jacek.
This would be me again, Zachary.
Oh, sorry, Zachary.
So the news, we are just about to implement the EVMC interface of Nimbus. Basically, this is a standard supported between the different Ethereum implementations for interchangeable virtual machine. The most inner working that executes the Ethereum code can be swapped in each of the implementations. And so we are supporting this interface, and there are several interesting use cases for this. For example, we can compare the performance of Nimbus against some of the other implementations. We can test the correctness of the virtual machine by embedding it into Get, for example, or Alet, the C++ client. So to take advantage of all the existing working code for networking and blockchain synchronization, but using our own virtual machine. And then we can do the opposite, implementing some of the working virtual machines into Nimbus and testing only our networking code. So this would be an interesting development. Also, we've made a lot of progress on the JSON RPC calls that are needed in Nimbus for Ethereum development, for supporting pairing Nimbus with Embark or Truffle, these development frameworks that allow you to compile code, to deploy smart contracts with your Ethereum client and to execute transactions. We hope to start testing soon with the Embark team, particularly on this. Our ongoing effort to implement the blockchain sync algorithm is continuing, albeit a little bit slowly. But we've also now started working on the LESS protocol and the Light client sync algorithm. We've also spent quite a bit of time on researching the planned migration to libp2p as the main networking protocol to be used in the sharding implementation of Ethereum. But it's basically, so far, the conclusion is that there's still not enough of a consensus reached, like how exactly libp2p is going to be used. And so we are a little bit on hold right now. We haven't tried to start our own implementation yet. We also had a goal set from the last 2 weeks to start testing Nimbus on multiple different platforms and devices. So far, it is obvious that the rest of the teams at Status are not yet testing the core app on the actual devices. So perhaps we'll be trying to come up with a solution ourselves, for first testing Nimbus on different devices and then letting the core team also take advantage of this. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zari. And the other part of the research, which is ULC, and this is Boris.
Hello, guys. Previous week, we worked on testing our ULC implementation with other LEC clients, and it's fully compatible with GS from 1.8.3 to 1.8.14 version. Also, we prepared ULC integration swarm. So our next steps is integrate lesson integration problems and help Igor to integrate it. And also our main goal is to integrate ULC into a region of guest So that's all.
Thank you so much, Boris. Yeah, the work on ULC and ADS is so important. It's a big part of the wall of shame, and it's really great to see it taking shape again. And that is the end of the town hall. If there are any questions, Johnny, is there anything through on the YouTube channel or in our questions?
There is nothing that has not been answered.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for another fantastic town hall. As always, it's incredible to see just the amount of work that's being done and the progress that we're making towards some of the really core and key goals that we have in terms of driving forward the mass adoption of Ethereum. So I look forward to chatting with you all in 2 weeks again, and have a fantastic week. Cheers.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.